Victor Fries is a man defined by his tragedy and loss, but what if that wasn't the whole story? Let's hop into the pages of Batman One Bad Day, Mr. Freeze #1, a brand new one-shot courtesy of Gerry Duggan, and find out what happens next together, shall we? So then, as we join the story, we're treated to a flashback to the early days of Victor and Nora's marriage, something that we honestly don't get to see all that much. It would seem that even before Nora got sick, cracks were beginning to form in her and Victor's relationship. She liked to go out, she liked to have fun with her friends, but her husband did not. Mr. Freeze was always buried in his work, and it seemed like he was always cold and distant long before becoming an actual supervillain. Now from there we jump forward to the present, the Christmas present that is, only not really because the main part of this story takes place early on in the careers of Batman and his new sidekick Robin, Dick Grayson, so it's actually more of a period piece. Together, the dynamic duo helped save a group of Christmas carolers from a serial killer calling themselves the Meek. If that name sounds familiar to you, it should, because the Meek was co-created by Gerry Duggan for a Scott Snyder Batman story. In fact, this won't be the last time Gerry Duggan references his older work either. It's on their way back to the Batcave that night. Bruce and Dick have a discussion about whether or not they feel some criminals are truly hopeless or which ones they think that could possibly be redeemed. And well, because it's the holiday season, Robin especially feels like a second chance should be given to Mr. Freeze. After all, he's not like the Joker, the Riddler, or so many of the other criminals they deal with on a near daily basis. Mr. Freeze was born out of tragedy and loss. Surely Batman of all people can relate to something like that, right? And what exactly is Mr. Freeze up to these days? Well, he's robbing an armored car with a brand new henchwoman codenamed Frostbite. I don't know why this lady got a name because she literally disappears as soon as she's introduced. Freeze in this story, you may notice, is written to sound a lot more like his animated series counterpart. He's a lot more verbose, which I've always enjoyed. And I mean, hey, if you've listened to any of my videos, you'll know I'm a master of the verbose myself. Also, because it's Christmas time, Mr. Freeze is able to walk around without his trademark helmet for this story, which doesn't really add much narratively, but it's certainly a fun little artistic note, if nothing else. After a short fight and quick discussion, Batman and Robin decide to look the other way on the whole armed robbery thing and offer Victor the chance to set up a brand new laboratory in an old LexCorp building where he's free to continue his cryo research into finally saving his wife. This should be a dream come true, however, Victor gets really cagey about actually bringing his wife to this new facility, which will end up making a lot more sense later. Victor gets right to work, but it's made abundantly clear early on that despite how far cryogenic technology has come in the intervening years, he's still nowhere close to being able to unfreeze his wife safely. Furthermore, in another series of flashbacks, we see that Nora actually worried about what would become of her husband after her death. Too often, Victor resented his wife just for living a life outside of him. He was controlling, obsessive, and she feared that if she died, he might never use his amazing brain to actually make the world a better place. And the last thing Nora wanted was her dying memory used as some sort of catalyst for bad behavior, and oh boy. If only she knew, right, ladies and gentlemen? Eventually, Freeze gets so defeated and enraged by his lack of progress, he just decides to set fire to the whole lab and leave, which means Batman and Robin are forced to go and bring him back in by force. But before that happens, Batman tries to look into Nora's old friends, and to his surprise, he learns that she actually had a missing last will and testament that Victor no doubt hid after the funeral. But why, you might be wondering? More on that in a minute. Batman and Robin manage to track Mr. Freeze back to his ship base, wherein him and Bruce have themselves a little fight, Batman making use of a brand new sun suit to try and counteract Mr. Freeze's ice powers. Again, I feel like we've seen this a million times in a dozen Mr. Freeze stories. It's during the fight Batman manages to get under Victor's skin by revealing that he looked into Nora's missing will. Turns out Nora was DNR, meaning that she wanted the right to die, but Victor stole that all away from her. That means that all this time Mr. Freeze spent trying to bring his wife back to life, none of it was really about Nora, all of it was about Victor and his inability to let go and move on. Again, something I'm sure Batman can really relate to. Robin ends up taking this harder than anyone else, by the way, because it ultimately proves that Batman was right early on in their little debate. Ultimately, Mr. Freeze is defeated and Nora's cryo tube is liberated. Normally, this would be the end of the story, but wait, there's a little bit more. What Robin said all throughout their battle ends up actually cutting through Freeze's armor, and he ends up revealing to Robin that while he may have failed in unfreezing his wife, he still managed to make some pretty titanic breakthroughs in cryotechnology that should be able to help save millions millions of people. And while Mr. Freeze may not have honored many of his wife's wishes while she was alive, he still wants to honor the one wish that he use his brain for good. And with Dick's help, that's exactly what Victor ends up doing. In fact, the comic comes to a close with Mr. Freeze making a snow angel outside Arkham Asylum, which is very similar to the snow angel scene from Arkham Manor, yet another Gerry Duggan Mr. Freeze story. And so that was Batman One Bad Day Mr. Freeze, and overall I thought it was fine, I guess. Its biggest problem is that it really doesn't manage to bring anything new or interesting to the Mr. Freeze formula. In fact, it retreads several very well-worn story paths at this point with Victor. Maybe he wasn't always a good guy before becoming a full-blown supervillain. Maybe he doesn't fully deserve his sympathetic status he gets as a villain. Yeah, this is all stuff we saw in the New 52, and while this story certainly explores it in a better, more interesting kind of way, it's far from fresh. I think Duggan maybe wanted to try and give Nora a little bit more agency as a character by showing that she had a life and friends outside of Victor, but it's not really explored that much. I will say, unlike a lot of the other One Bad Day storylines, at least Mr. Freeze acts like Mr. Freeze in this story. He doesn't completely eschew his gimmickry for no reason. It's also a very nice looking comic, to be sure, and there's fun to be had here. Duggan meeting the long-held fan belief head-on that Mr. Freeze probably could save his wife and not be a bad guy anymore if only Batman was willing to help him. And here in this story, that's exactly what happens. The only problem is that maybe Victor never actually wanted to save his wife as badly as he made it first seem. Again, a nugget of an interesting idea in there, especially when we juxtapose Mr. Freeze with Batman. Maybe Batman doesn't actually want to do near as much good as he makes it out to seem because, well, they both define themselves so thoroughly by their loss and trauma, and without it, who are they even? What this story probably suffers from more than just about any other of the Batman One More Bad Day stories is a bad case of padding. There's a whole Robin subplot. There's a Matches Malone aside. This isn't really a Mr. Freeze story so much as it is a Batman story where Mr. Freeze is in it. That lack of focus really hurts the book, but also reinforces that there's not much special going on with this story at all. It could have been any other Batman story in any other Batman book, which is why I can really only give this one a 6.5 out of 10. A real shame, too, because I love Duggan's work and I was hoping he could do the impossible to finally crack the uncrackable nut of writing a solid Mr. Freeze story that's not just Heart of Ice again. Also, what was the point of making this story a weird sort of prequel flashback thing? You could literally have dumped this at any other point in Batman's history and it would have worked fine.
Hey there everyone, Cape Joel again, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. It really helps drive engagement and helps me out too. Also, if you are a patron, which you can become for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content that no one else can ever see, and you'll get to see the Comic Multiverse podcast before anyone else too. You can check out all this and more down in the description. And until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.